I'll quickly move on and I'll shift focus now onto leadership, right? Because more often than not, we've always heard that the climate or an environment in an organization is determined top down. So largely, if the leadership has a certain manner of working, that is typically percolated through the organization. And any change to that is largely regarded in a slightly hostile manner. So how should leaders embrace this change? Because everyone is different, and with each passing generation, the difference is really increasing every single time we see the next generation come through. So how should leaders address this as a situation and as a problem? And what changes should they make in terms of their expectations?
So again, I can't speak very definitively, but I also had an HR expert who's written a chapter in my book called Mr. R.R. Nair. And, from what I understand and what his point of view is that a lot of leadership training and development is required. A lot of coaching and mentoring is required in that phase, because one is every time you make a transition in your life and in your career, you need to kind of be able to understand what needs to change and what needs to stay the same. That is one part of, the hand holding that you need. The second part is that, what do you feel as an employee, as somebody, because leaders are also employees of the organization at the end of the day. So you are an employee as well as you're a leader. So how do you manage those two perspectives? And what I found is because of our status consciousness in society, as we move higher and higher up the hierarchy, lower in the hierarchy, you're constantly questioning yourself. You're constantly wondering, am I doing a good job? Am I on the right track? Should I change this? Should I change that? As you start getting that respect and you start moving up the ladder, you tend to stop doing that because you feel that, now that you've achieved a certain level of success, it's a validation of, whatever you're doing and whatever you're doing is right. And it may or may not be the case. Like Kalyani Kapoor says, a lot of, personal insecurity is what creeps into the leadership style. And when that happens is when, things in the organization will turn topsy-turvy, R.R. Nair also talks about, how there was so we are kind of in a transition right now, India is now becoming more and more democratic, so we see less of, while we are still very status and class conscious, that is starting to dilute, and we need to recognize the fact that it's diluting, and we need to mirror that in our companies and organizations as well. So democratization means that, we feel more able to assert ourselves, more able to question people who might be higher up than us in the hierarchy. And, so how do people who are used to command and control kind of a thing, who've grown up in that environment and now are in leadership positions where they have subordinates who are open to questioning the authority, which they never did to their own bosses? So it is, I feel a lot of leadership training, mentoring, coaching is required, and also a lot of upskilling, I think introspection is something which I would recommend to every person on an individual level, whether they are leaders or they are employees, that, use the data in my book, use the data that you have from your friends and, the other experiences and other exposures that you have, use it to introspect for yourself and see where your balance lies. Because in every situation, your response can be a little different. It doesn't have to be, we are all looking for an easy way out. Unfortunately, if there was just one way to behave and I could kind of, program myself to do it, that would be great. But unfortunately, that's not. And that is where our problem with hard work versus smart work also comes in. Because, and I faced that myself. I was used to doing hard work, and when smart work was called for, I really didn't know how to make that adjustment. I don't think I did it very well.